Up 2x2 formation. Road change now. We go racing for the first time this season. 3 hours of GT action. It's go.
It's very tight as they come down. Group of cars coming in. This has all got trouble written all over it. This is G3 cars.
Drop downhill there, head towards the Aqua Minerale. Imola, of course. There's another one off through the gravel. As wide as possible as they drop downhill, putting that from the inside line. Yes, he did. Through he goes.
Good evening everybody and welcome back to another Apex Online Racing stream here for round 3 of Season X for the Tier 2 drivers in the GT3 League. We are here at Bathurst, Mount Panorama, a brilliant circuit and a very daunting one at that. We saw yesterday in Tier 1 just how unforgiving the mountain can be and can cause all sorts of issues in terms of crashes, multi-car pile-ups, mistakes. There's just so many places where it can go wrong around here, and we'll have to see how the Tier 2 guys get on this evening for their trial at it. But looking back on what happened last time out, we were at Barcelona for the second round of the championship, and that gave us just as much drama as we are used to for Tier 2 this season. Daniel Pashka put himself in a very, very strong position to potentially win the race, but unfortunately just could not quite put it together on the day. Ended up making a couple of small mistakes, and that ended up giving the win in the end to his close friend, Matthias Weber, who took full advantage of Pashka's mistakes there. So Pashka has been looking very fast so far this season, maybe not so much in the practice session, but we'll have to see how that translates over to qualifying. But he'll be looking to try making it 3rd time's a charm and seeing if he can finally get that victory that we've clearly seen that he's very much capable of earning in terms of raw pace so far this season. Looking at standings though, that run of consistency that Pashka still has managed to establish puts himself at the top of the leaderboards by just 7 points over Christian Steinhauser, so a good season from him so far as well. And then a driver who has had a fairly good opening couple of rounds, maybe not quite spectacular, we haven't quite seen him fully get up to speed, but is Remy Papin, who has come away with a 9th and a 4th place position so far to get himself up into 3rd, but quite a few points adrift of our top 2. And then we have the likes of Alessio Mellis, Gaspar Marac, our round 1 winner, unable to take part last race, and I believe also for this race as well. I think he is planning on returning for Zandvoort, so be interesting to see how Gaspar's pace runs when we get to the latter half of the season. And then Weber with that strong opening bid for his championship hopes, getting that full maximum score last week to see him jump up all the way into 6th place with just that 1 win on the board. So a mixture of fortunes so far for a lot of these drivers, but we've seen time and time again the consistency during these championships is absolutely key. Even taking a little skip across over to what happened in the PESC Cup on iRacing recently, that Pinto only won 1 race during that championship, but it was ultimately his consistency that ended up earning him that glorious title. So very much the sort of thing that these guys will be looking to try to do as well. In the meantime, for drivers that are looking very, very quick, Joash Yelenko and Dennis Latz and Trafka all representing the Hondas and locking out the front 3 spots, and very, very quick times of that as well. Very low 2-minute ones for Yelenko and Latz. So that is extremely quick from those guys. We'll have to see how they get on in qualifying, and also practice. Could be drivers still working on their race setup, so it's difficult to see where some of these will fit into the action. We've also got the likes of Matt York that are currently sitting nicely within the top 10, and the name that will probably be familiar to quite a few of you if you've been following AOR for a while is this man, Luka Vidalik, in the number 29 Audi. Can't get too much of a good view from him at the moment, but representing Green Mamba Racing for this season. We usually see him in the FTW cars in Tier 1. Has been often a Porsche driver amongst the grid, and a very, very fast one at that. So it'll be interesting to see for his first round this season how he gets on in that Audi. And we know how quick those Audis have been, but they've also been very, very harsh on their tyres. So not too far away from qualifying now, as some of these drivers will be putting together their final laps to eke out as much performance as they can, as we see Dominic Koroshavin getting very, very close through the S's. Such a windy section, and you really have to flirt with the barriers there to maximise the time. Beautiful livery on that 330 car as he makes his way down Conrod Straight. This will be somewhere the Audi is strong, and the session skipped forward, so he'll be unable to complete that lap, but we will be heading into qualifying. Let's head over to some of our first drivers coming out of the pits then, as they look to try to make their opening bids in this qualifying. We do have some changeable weather potentially for this round. It's remaining quite consistently dry at the moment, but we have had a lot of variability in the weather for Tier 2 already this season, so we definitely cannot keep it out of the possibilities of the sort of race that we could see develop here. Looking at Andre Verona in the Lamborghini at the moment. We haven't got too many Lamborghinis in the field, but he was looking pretty quick in that opening part of practice, so it'll be interesting to see how he gets on, see if the Lamborghinis can make their way up the grid a bit further. I'm not sure we actually have too many other. We've got Bryn in the number 21 car, who's another Lamborghini representative, but I don't think... No, they are the only two Lamborghinis, excuse me, in the field. I suppose there's some irony there. There's obviously a lot of debate about whether Lamborghini is Lamborghini anymore since the Audi takeover, but yeah, it'd be interesting to see how Verona can get on. Bryn didn't seem quite as strong and as confident in the practice session for getting pace out of that car, but the 402 looking very, very quick indeed. Who's that Audi just ahead of him? This who's going to be making their way around the mountain first of all. I think I see a number 9 car, Audi, but I can't quite place who that is. So instead we will hop on board with Verona as he takes us for a lap around Bartha. So into turn 1 of Hell's Corner, then hard on the brakes, get yourself hooked into that cam, but get on the power as early as you possibly can. Really want to carry all of that momentum and speed. Use the exit curb to your advantage as well to really drive the car out of the corner, and then this straight all the way up the hill and all the way up the mountain. Very, very long, and then before the tricky braking zone of Quarry of turn 2, really got to get it hooked into the camber once more. There'll be lots of attempts for overtaking going into turn 2 in the race, but unless you're on the inside, it probably won't happen. Now the tricky complex of 3 and 4. Double apex corner, spot your braking point as you work your way through the barriers. Very, very close to being on the limit there, and then continuing to wind your way up through 5, 6, 7. They all come in such a flurry, and then down into the dip of 8. And then over the crest of 9. Really got to be careful with the barrier on the outside. We saw Whitehead clipping it a couple of times in yesterday's race, as Lamborghini really pushing it all the way into Skyline, and they're hard on the brakes, down the S's. Really got to be careful not to lock up the brakes and clip any of the walls on that descent, and to run it all the way to the wall on the exit. Could have used maybe a bit more track there, and then tricky braking zone down into the dipper. Tricky apex in 18 there, because there's that secondary bit of the barrier that kind of juts out, and sometimes you have 2 stabs at the wheel, but these drivers obviously done a lot of practice and they know where that apex is almost blindfolded. Now the longest flat out section of the circuit, down Conrod Straight, and then over to the left hand side, use all the track, clip the apex going into the chase, and then hard on the brakes into turn 21. Looks like it's been quite a neat and tidy lap from the 402. This was where there was a big pile up in lap 1 yesterday for the tier 1 drivers, but down into Murray's Corner for the final parts of the lap. Can be easy to throw away. There's not much runoff, but Verona goes on to provisional pole on a 201.8. We have seen times faster than that in the practice session, so it'd be interesting to see how that one stands up. But it looks like as the initial times come through, that's some pretty strong pace. But then again, Dennis Latz on 201.0, a fantastic lap from the Honda driver that goes flying off the circuit. Maybe didn't carry enough fuel for another lap, but that is a brilliant lap there. 0.8 of a second faster than last week's winner Weber. Yelenko, his best effort, a 201.6, and Latz was looking very, very comfortable in this Honda during the practice session. Purple in all 3 sectors, and not by a small amount either. That is a mighty lap that Latz has put together so far, so it'll be interesting to see how long that stands for and how much some of the other drivers can challenge for that one. We've got 21 car that's brought out a yellow flag. That's the other Lamborghini of Bryn that has gone off at the final corner by the looks of it. So what happened to Bryn there? It looks like everything's fine through the final sector so far. So did he get it wrong under braking? See, that was not quite the series of events I was expecting to pan out. So clearly, Jean-Michel Bryn has had a rather major disconnect there. I don't think that's a technical issue in terms of hardware. I think that's clearly a network style of issue, and has gone straight off into the wall. Does look like, though, he has been able to reconnect and will go out for another attempt. I thought that he'd got his braking wrong on the entry by using a bit too much and then just clipping that grass. But nope, it was a very different set of circumstances that played out for that one. Who else have we got on a very good lap? Watson at the moment, the 147 Ferrari, our fastest Ferrari so far. And Jordan Watson has shown good pace at multiple points so far this season. Was very, oh, it's a huge impact into the wall there as he heads through the exit of turn 9. Looks like he'll still carry on with the lap. Gets a very, very big wheel on the entry though, and gets it all wrong under braking. And I imagine that'll be a return to the garage for the 147. So you can see how easily it is for the car to become unstable in that very tricky braking zone. And Watson falling victim to that. Verona already up 0.2 of a second on his previous lap. He has already improved and is almost onto the time set by Yelenko. But that time from Latz at the moment seems insurmountable for everybody else. That is just absolutely insane pace from Latz in that number 5 car. Verona 0.4 of a second up now, so maybe he'll have something to say about it. Stays well clear of the wall, so could have maybe carried a bit more speed, but maybe looking to run it all the way to the limits at the very end of the session, down into the S's, a little bit squirrely on the entry, but gets it nicely tucked in to each of those apexes. The Lamborghini, usually very good in these slower speed, tight corners, so fares very well in the S's. Has previously struggled on horsepower in other BOP variants, but maybe in this current build of the game, that is not so much of a downfall for this car, at least in terms of the way the Verona has his car set up and hooked up. Really seems to be able to extract some good pace out of that car at the moment. Running down towards the chase, using all of that track. You see that extra little bit of tarmac on the entry to get all of the momentum before going into the braking zone. Really wants to straighten up the car as much as you can, trying to minimise the chances of locking. It's been a strong lap there from Verona. He hasn't found any more time in this latter portion of the lap, but it does look like it might be good enough to jump up at least one spot. Traffic has gone up to P2 and Verona goes up to P3 just behind him by 0.06 of a second. But now we've got some times that are starting to maybe make Latz sweat just a little bit, but Latz himself is also on a lap, so he'll be looking to see if he can dip under the 2:01 mark. That would be an extraordinary feat if he can. Who else have we got driving around? We've got Vidalik that's on improvement by 0.5 seconds, or maybe went a little bit deep though into the final corner, so it's going to be an improvement up to P5 for Vidalik in that number 29 Audi, but unable to quite get in front of the lead Audi of Weber at the moment, last week's winner. And where is Daniel Pashka? Daniel Pashka all the way down in P14, and well, team name is lost in pace, and right now Daniel Pashka hasn't managed to put in the sort of lap that we would have expected to see from him so far, based on the sort of pace he's demonstrated in the season in the first couple of rounds. So still just over 5 minutes on the clock, so we'll get about 3 more runs at this, depending on if he comes into the pits any more times over. But driver that leading the championship well down into the midfield, and around Bathurst is not the sort of place where you want to be there. In the meantime though, Uros Yelenko is on a very, very quick lap. You see so close to the wall on the exit of Forest Elbow there as he flashes the lights of the number 7. That's Trafka in front of him to get out of the way. Wouldn't have been held up too much, I don't think. He's 0.5 of a second up at the moment, so I'll certainly see him challenge for the front row. But in the meantime, Dennis Latz does it. He breaks into that 2-minute barrier, the 2:09, so the benchmark just got even harder to try to reach there. What can Yelenko do? He's continuing to find time. I think this will be good enough to get him onto the front row. Whether or not he could just eke out enough to challenge for Latz, I'm not sure. Not quite. Only 700ths between them though, so a strong effort there from Yelenko. As once again we go back into a Honda 1-2-3. Wow, if you think back to a few seasons ago, when would you have thought we would be saying that? The Hondas have always been fairly strong around the mountain of around the mountain of Bathurst, but never really to this degree. There's always been cars that have been a bit faster, the likes of the Mercedes and And even the Audi at certain points has been very, very fast. But the Honda really does seem to have a good package at the moment in the current BOP to put in some very, very rapid times for these drivers. You can see you've got a lot of mid-engine cars of similar sort of wheelbase lengths in the front few positions. We've got 3 Hondas, and we've got the Lamborghini of Verona, and then we've got the trio of Audis of Jogurk, Weber and Weidelich. But still no Daniel Paschke, whereas Paschke, he's down in P20. P20 for the number 77 car, so really not seemingly able to find any pace at the moment. Still got a couple of potential attempts to rectify, but that could make a very, very difficult day for the German driver. So we'll have to see how the remaining few minutes of the session pans out. We've got some drivers on a reasonable improvement. We've got on our Rodri in the 200 McLaren coming into the final sector now. He's found half a second in this lap, so this will certainly bump him up a few positions. Matt York is also gaining a decent chunk of time as well, so we'll have to see how he gets on at the end of this lap. Rodri, though, where is he going to jump up to? He'll be up to P20, so I'll displace Paschke, I believe. Again, it will by another position. Matt York, whereabouts is he? I think the camera's just picking him up. There he is, all the way down the Conrad straight already. The BMW may be struggling a little bit around here for general pace. Doesn't have the best grunt, doesn't have the best agility in these slow speed corners. And Bathurst is almost exclusively a combination of those two types parts of the track. And Matt York has completely missed his braking zone there. And that will be his effort done. And I don't think... Oh, it's going to be really tight if he wants to get out of the pit lane to do one more lap. He's effectively got to get out in the next 5 seconds. I think he's going to miss it by the smallest of margins. Yep, that's going to be it. So Matt York will start no higher up than P28, and he was a second up on that last lap, so he will be fuming with what has happened there. Looks like he's still going to try to go around for this lap, but I just do not see him being able to make that in time. He'd have to do a pole position-like time in order to do that. But in the meantime, speaking of pole position, Dennis Latz has found another 3/10, so he is really pushing. Weber has found half a second as well in the opening sector alone. So Weber could actually come out of nowhere and maybe upset this Honda trio at the very front. Jogurk has tried his best to do so, goes up into P4 and has come into the pits. That'll be his best attempt done. But what can Dennis Latz do? He will potentially have another attempt if he wants to go for it after this. He has lost a couple of tenths though coming through the chase. Still a tenth up, so it might be an improvement if he gets a good exit out to find a corner, and he will. It's a 2:0.6. 2:06. That's a very, very, very fast time from the number 5 Honda. But Weber is continuing to improve, and not by a small margin either. He's almost up by a second as he heads down towards the Conrad straight, and we know that Latz lost a bit of time in that final part of the lap. Can Weber bring all sorts of upset to Latz's day? He's up by a second as he heads down in towards the braking zone, hard on the brakes. Got to be careful with the curbs, neat and tidy through there. He's continuing to find time. I'm almost concerned that the Delta's given me false hopes at the moment, but it's looking like it's fairly reasonable. Has he backed out of the lap? I think he's backed out of the lap. And he has. So Weber, whether or not he invalidated the lap somewhere, and that was where the false sort of improvements were coming from, I'm not sure. But Weber did seem, he was well on pace with the previous sectors, but in that final sector completely backed off visibly in the final series of corners, so he'll go for one more attempt. There's a couple of drivers making their way around. Oh, that's a big impact for the number 17 Honda. Smacks into the wall on the exit of turn 6. Will look like he'll continue on with the lap. Yelenko really thrashing the car around as he heads through McPhillamy Park, and all over the grass on the exit, still trying to get it put together as he heads through Skyline and into the S's. Somehow manages to get it put together. In the meantime, I've seen that the 77, Daniel Pashka's retired to the pits and starts no higher than P16, so disastrous qualifying for the championship leader, and a very, very tough circuit to try to make up that margin as Yelenko once again hits the exit of Forest Elbows. That's going to slow him down the back straight. So Yelenko, I don't think he is improving. I'm seeing deltas, green deltas for Weber once again, but nowhere near what he was before. So maybe that margin of improvement was a lock-up or something through the S's and gained a lot of time. Oh, he seems to have lost time on the exit of 18 and 19. So I'm not sure if Weber's actually going to be able to find any time in this lap. We've got Koroshavin just ahead of him that is 2/10 up on his previous best. That'll see him jump up potentially to the top 10 if he can get a nice sector 3. That was a little bit wide on the exit of the chase there. Can he find any more time in the final corner? I'm not sure if it's going to be enough. Just run to the line there, and it will be an improvement, but only up to P12, and Weber does improve, but only by a small amount, and will remain P8 in the end. So it will be a Honda trio leading the way for this race then, of Dennis Latz, Uros Yelenko, and Trafka. Well, not manufacturers that we would have expected to see potentially in previous seasons gone by. As someone mentions in the chat, the Hondas, yes, have always been very strong around here at Bathurst, but oh, we have rain. That certainly puts a bit of a spanner in the works potentially for some of these drivers, and in actual fact completely counters a point that I was just about to introduce, which was the idea of fuel saving. We saw in Tier 1 yesterday that several experienced drivers, Jardier being one of them, was actually had to back off completely at the end because of fuel usage and running out of fuel to be able to make it for the full hour. Remember, for these races there is no refueling for these cars, so cars that are quite consumption hungry, things like the Mercedes for example, is quite fortunate that by the looks of it I don't think we actually have a single Mercedes in this grid, because that car is renowned for eating through the fuel very, very harshly. So these drivers really do have to be careful about how they pace themselves through the race, even though it is an hour long, and that's a characteristic that we don't usually see in these races, but certainly adds an element of potential surprise. But this rain definitely is going to add something into the mix here. So we will have to see how these drivers get on with these conditions. Very unknown conditions, but in 10 minutes time, it is going to potentially dry up. So do we maybe just have a wet start? And if we do, how do you play that? Do you go for the wet tyres at the start and just take it cautiously and then try to stretch out a really long stint on the slicks later on? Or do you try splitting it 50-50 and just tiptoe your way around on the slicks? But if there's drivers starting on the wets versus slicks in these opening parts of the laps, that's a very, very severe pace difference potentially between those drivers, and we know how much of a bottleneck, how big of an incident we can sometimes have here on the mountain, and that can make it very, very difficult to potentially negotiate for these drivers. So we'll have to see how that plays out in terms of strategy. We won't really be able to tell apart from seeing who drops down the order and who gains positions potentially, but those gambling for the slicks, well, those gambling for the six will be hoping that this rain sticks around for a very short period of time, and those going for the wets will be hoping that it really stretches out to that 10-minute margin. But bearing in mind that the 10 minutes, that just means that the rain is going to have stopped. Whether or not it takes a bit longer for the track to dry up, we don't have the hottest of temperatures around here. We'll have to wait and see. But running through the grid now, Dennis Latz with a brilliant qualifying session from him. Sees him start this race on pole position, leading the Honda trio of Uros Yelenko. A great effort from him. And then Trafka, a name that we have seen amongst AOR in recent events, both in Tier 2 obviously and in the BMW Cup, but a really strong effort there from Trafka in the Honda with a ironically put together team name of Buff Aston. I think other drivers maybe on the grid would be asking to nerf the Honda on today's grid, but comical one nonetheless. Then we've got Christos Jorguk in that beautiful liveried SpongeBob Audi, and the first of our Audis for quite a while, so a good strong effort there from him, followed by Verona in the Lamborghini. Have to be interesting to see how he gets on in the wet conditions. Lamborghini has never really been known to be very good in the wet, so it'll be interesting to see how he copes with these changing conditions. Remy Rose starting in 6th place, the first of our BMW, so a very good late effort from Remy there. And then followed up by Alessio Mellis, our lead Ferrari, who will start in P7. Followed up by Matthias Weber, last week's winner, and not exactly the ideal position that he would have been hoping for, just ahead of Jordan Watson, who again we've seen strong pace from Jordan in the past. Can he put it together all today? Bathurst is certainly one to bring out a lot of spectacular driving. Whether or not it's too much pressure for some of these drivers, we'll have to wait and see. Watson will be hoping that he can convert this into a good position. Loris Madiri starting in P10, followed by Luka Vidalik in the number 29 Audi. Very experienced driver, and probably one to express quite a bit of caution, I would imagine, on the opening lap, and will be looking to try to pick and choose his way through the order in this opening stint. Dominic Koroshavin starting in P12, followed up by Robin Moe, our first of the McLarens. McLaren's clearly struggling a little bit in pace around here. And then Remy Papin, not so good in terms of where he would have been wanting to be starting. Driver currently sitting in P3 in the standings, all the way down in 14th. And we have Mash, the first of our Porsches. A good effort there from Mash. The Porsche not a particularly strong car around this circuit, although Whitehead clearly did an extremely good job yesterday to bring home a podium finish for his championship hopes in Tier 1. But generically, the Porsche does tend to struggle around here almost entirely because of straight line speed and the general unpredictability of the back end of that car. It's a very tricky one to handle around here. We've got Thomas Jack in the number 13 McLaren, followed by the man starting in P2. That went by me. Steinhauser in the Bentley all the way down in P17. And I was going to say he might be rather grateful actually potentially for this rain, because we saw the Bentleys were one of the cars that really struggled with fuel consumption yesterday. With this wet start, the lap times might be just about slow enough and the pace might be just slow enough so that is no longer an issue, so it may work to his advantage. But very, very poor start for him. And then the championship leader just behind him, Daniel Pashka, not where he would have wanting to be starting, to try to bounce back after those couple of difficult first opening rounds, all the way down in P18. Then the one Lexus in the field, Yuko Terminen down in P19, Hans Peter in 20th position, number 55 McLaren. And then we have Nicholas Hertz in another one of our Porsches, followed up by Milton Tomlinson Dennis, who was a very strong finisher last time out at Barcelona. I think Tomlinson Dennis, where did he finish? Oh, actually finished in P18 in the end. I think, though, that he was contesting for a much better position than that earlier on in the race. So I can't remember exactly what happened to him, but we know that he does have strong pace. We've then got David Gavon in 23rd place with Arnaud Rodri starting just behind him. And then Ola Pitchik in the 141 Audi. And then we've got a driver who's got quite a high ping there. Hopefully it doesn't cause too many issues for anybody. We've got Sheng HQB in 26th. James Cowley in 27th with Mr. Jones behind him in 28th. Jean-Michel Brin, who hopefully won't have any connection issues during the race, down in 29th. And then rounding out the top 30, Jay Fang, followed by Matt York, who dropped down several positions there at the end, unable to put in that final attempt to bump up his qualifying position. Then we have Rosetta in 32nd, Benjamin King down in 33rd, Benji McCluskey in 34th, Neuwirth in 35th, as all these guys start racing towards getting themselves in formation. We've got Jan Climbs, who I can't seem to click on, so I think Jan Climbs may have left the session already. Then we've got Gergaud in 36th, and Dutnissen in 37th, but we'll skip back towards the front of the pack. They're heading down towards the final corner to get this race underway. There's a penalty there, a 30-second penalty for Remy Rose. So that is already disastrous, but interestingly, the rain has already stopped. So what decisions have these guys made on the tyre strategy? How costly is it potentially going to be in terms of their races? As we get ready to go underway, patiently waiting, and green lights away here at Bathurst for round 3. It's a good start there from Latson. I think about that position covered in towards turn 1. Any sort of chaos in the background, we've got that's definitely a good getaway from our leader. Looks like it's all been fairly clean. I don't see any yellow flags down the order, but then there's that big drag race all the way up the hill. Dennis Latz has got enough of a margin to Yelenko behind by the looks of it to be able to maintain that position into the next corner. See, already getting very, very busy between some of these drivers. Got several cars going side by side. There's Vidalik in the background, I think, going side by side with Rosetta. We saw one of the BMWs going wheel to wheel with another driver as the timing board starts to sort its way out. But it looks like in the opening series of corners, dare I suggest, we'll try looking around once the leaderboard sorts itself out. I think it's all we've got side by side between. That is very, very intense. We've got Mo Pashka's in that mix as well. I think that is one of the other Audis in front as well, getting very, very close to one another. Oh, we've got Porsche running off on the exit of turn 10, just about managing to keep it all together as we work our way down the mountain for the first time, and it looks like so far so good. It's been fairly clean. Steinhauser got a little bit of a poor getaway. He's dropped down as a potential move there on the Audi, and McLaren getting a little bit of contact there. McLaren getting all sorts bumped up, and there's contact between two. And oh, Pashka, the championship lead, has been taken out, and a huge pile up down on the Conrod Straight. Several cars involved in that one, as always Mash has a very poor rejoin there as another car gets sent into the wall, and it's tier 1 all over again. Disaster as the cars continue to collide with one another. Several cars taken out there in the background, and both of our main championship contenders, I said that it could be bad if they started that far down the order, and it has been absolutely disastrous. Pashka only just getting away now as Yuko Terminen reversing down the mountain, and that is absolutely disastrous for some of these guys' championship hopes. You can see visibly these cars absolutely destroyed. Will try to make their way back to the pits, but oh, in the meantime, what has happened to Dennis Latz? Dennis Latz has gone into the pit, so he has decided to gamble with the weather and immediately make a switch over in tyres by the looks of it, as I think that was Milton Tomlinson, Dennis and Mr. Jones heading side by side in that opening series of corners, but strategy already coming into play as Yogurk has made his way ahead of Yelenko, so Yelenko lost time during all of that as well. Wasn't involved in that pile-up at the end of the first lap, but Yogurk now has jumped Trafficker as well, so Yogurk's had a brilliant start. So are some of these drivers on the wet tyres, and has it been Yogurk that has made that masterclass call to start on the slick tyres? Because the way he is driving at the moment, Trafficker did a 218 on the last lap. I see some drivers still on having their windscreen wipers on. Probably not needed anymore, but you can see visibly a huge gap as Verona really putting the number 7 Honda under all sorts of pressure. So I think this is visibly some of those differences with drivers that have started on the drives. This number 99 car, who is that? That's had an incident on the hill. That's Benjamin King, who has skipped back to the pits, so didn't quite see what happened there. We'll head back towards the front though, as Yelenko really losing time to that Audi up ahead now. So it looks like Yogurk has driven very well in this opening stint, as we've got the likes of Koroshavin, who has climbed a number of positions to find himself up into P6. Last week's winner Weber in P5 at the moment. Now this will be telling. Oh, Watson's off! Watson off in the background. Don't know if there was contact or not. Looks like it will be a safe rejoin. See some drivers diving into the pits already. Just want to see if we can see the contact. It wasn't contact, it's just complete off there from Watson, so missing his braking point. Maybe on the wrong tyres, potentially, it's difficult to say. But who have we got coming into the pits? We've got Trafka, Verona, Several other drivers diving in. Nicholas Hurt has come into the pits as well. King, I think, has retired to the pits. Steinhauser's still in the pits. I don't know whether or not that's a retirement or just the pure length of the pit stop after that huge amount of damage on the opening lap. Mash as well, suddenly being mashed up in the opening lap. There's no doubt about that, and Pashka is still there too. Got a horrible feeling that some of those drivers may be ones that have retired, as Yelenko came into the pits as well. I didn't notice that initially. So a lot of those initial drivers, number 5 car now on the mountain has gone off, and I think have they disconnected from the server? I'm not sure. It was down into the S's. We had a yellow flag, and that's usually rather telling. But now we've got the likes of Dominic Koroshavin all the way up in P2. So a lot of these drivers got Madiri up in P4. Jordan Watson, despite the offers, always a 141 car. There's a yellow flag in the background. Who is that for? That is for Pitchik. And I think Pitchik has retired to the pits as well. So drivers continuing to have misfortune. So what happened there? Oh, that was with our leader. So was there an incident between our leader and the backmarker of Pitchik? So Pitchik now coming into Skyline. Does he lose it on his own? Oh, he does. Oh, completely, and makes contact with the wall and tags Yogurk on the way down. So Yogurk, an innocent bystander there. It's not the first time this season that he has ended up suffering damage from another car through no mistake of his own, but he is absolutely 8 seconds ahead of anybody else. So regardless of that, he is absolutely flying at the moment. So despite that damage, he's opened up such a big margin that he could very much look to try to repair that later on in the race and still maintain the race lead. Because looking at that last lap, there was only a 300th of a second between himself and Koroshavin. Madiri was fairly well on the pace, and now we've got Weber coming into the pits, and Watson and Vidalik. So these guys, some of these were fairly close to that kind of front running pack, so I'm not sure whether or not this is for a wet tyre change or if this is drivers just trying to correct their tyre pressures on to a much better sort of range so they can really extract the most amount of performance from them. It's difficult to tell. You can see over half the grid has come into the pits. Our leading driver of those that have pitted, understandably, is Yelenko. We'll have to keep an eye on his lap times. He's very much in clean air at the moment. It's 2:07s for Yogurk out in front. And that was the out lap for Yelenko there. So there'll be his first flying lap in just a moment. But several drivers continuing to come into the pits, but Yogurk seemingly very happy with the position that he is in at the moment. You can understand why, because he has a huge margin over everybody else and managed to somehow jump up to the front of the pack in that opening series of chaos. Let's see where the likes of Mr. Jones and Neuwirth are going to emerge here. There aren't too many close battles on track at the moment, although we may be about to have one of them. Where is Mr. Jones relative to these drivers? That's the McLaren of, I think that might be Thomas Jack potentially behind him in the Vodafone McLaren. But the McLaren just not quite able to close up enough. Mr. Jones will hold the inside. That's all you need to do, really, to defend towards turn 2, because there is no grip on the outside there. And I think the McLaren is going to find that out very, very quickly. Time board still working itself out there, as the two McLarens battling very, very hard behind the Aston Martin there, but unable to have a change of positions. That is Thomas Jack putting all sorts of pressure onto Robin Moe in that lead 13 McLaren. But it looks like Robin Moe has gathered himself up again. See, really pushing the margins over the hill. As check back in with our leaders, a 2:05.3 for Yogurk, 0.7 of a second clear of the man running in P2. But Milton Tomlinson Dennis, 2:05.8, so strong pace there from him. We've got some more pitters of Cowley and York. Now, what about Yelenko? What sort of pace is Yelenko on? Because that's really the driver that we need to be keeping an eye on. So he's going to be finishing his lap now. And let's see what the Honda ends up doing. Oh, it's a 2:05 dead. So he's 0.3 of a second faster than Yogurt. And right now, that may not seem like a particularly big feature. But bearing in mind, before Yelenko pitted, there was only a couple of seconds between these two. So if Yelenko can keep up that pace, if he can stay out of trouble, there's damage on that Audi as well, remember. If Yogurt decides to fix that, that could very well see a change of position for the lead, even if we don't see it for a while. But Yogurt may be trying to play the long game and have the stronger tyres at the end to try to take the victory in the second portion of the race and sacrifice track position. Bathurst is a circuit where you can overtake here. It's very difficult to overtake here, there's no doubt about that, but there are still multiple opportunities where you can potentially make it work. And we know that the Audi has very good straight line speed and grunt out of corners, so it's the sort of car that you want in order to try to make an overtake potentially happen. What battles do we have potentially out on the circuit? There we've got Matt York, and I think that's actually unlapping, or lapping, excuse me, Arnaud Rogerie, unless my time board... Oh, no, that was actually for position. The time board getting a little bit wonky again. So Matt York jumps up a spot, gets himself down the inside for turn 2, as in that's McCluskey lurking around in the background there in 23rd in that beautifully painted... Oh! Thought he was going to hit the wall there over the crest, but just about keeps it out of there. You can see the margin for error around here on the mountain is very, very small. As in the meantime, Dennis Latz, so Dennis Latz came into the pits, and I've just realized he doesn't seem to have emerged. I can't click on Dennis Latz, on the man that started on pole position and was leading the race early on. I do believe he has left for session, so disaster strikes again for Dennis Latz. He's had misfortune in Tier 2 in the past where he's been on incredibly strong pace, but for various technical issues hasn't been able to put it together for a full race distance, and I have a horrible, horrible feeling that the same thing has happened once more. So disastrous stuff there for him. In the meantime though, keeping an eye on the times, last lap for Yogurt, a 2:05 dead. In the meantime, the likes of Verona, a 2:04 dead, so a second faster than our race leader, and Juris Yelenko wasn't much slower on a 2:04.2. So these drivers really are gaining a lot of time right now, and maybe just that early portion of the race where the slick tyres in the wet conditions, there can be a lot of scrubbing, particularly if they're not in the right pressure window and temperature window. It does start to have some additional adverse effects on their wear, and that is potentially exactly what's happened. In the meantime, we've got Matthias Weber, who I believe is coming into the pits for a second time now, so I'm not quite sure what the reasons are behind that. Hopefully he'll emerge from the pits. He does look like he's going to, so maybe put those tyres at the wrong sort of pressures and has decided it's better to pit now. Oh, number 77, that's our championship leader, Pashka. What's happened to Daniel Pashka? There's, I can see on the dirt there, so I think Daniel Pashka has had a moment going up the mountain, desperately trying to recover, maybe pushing just a little bit too hard. All fine so far as he tagged the wall, as he comes over the crest. I think he might... Oh, gets a huge bump on the apex. Does he keep it out of the wall? Good job, that man. Just about manages to. Those tyres will be absolutely shredded, but just about manages to stop himself from getting any more damage. But this day for Daniel Pashka is going from bad to worse. So, and he's now having to let all of those cars by. This is painful for the number 77 car. In the meantime, whereabouts is Steinhauser in his attempt at recovery drive? I think Cameron's just taking a bit of time to pick him up. Steinhauser is pushing on, but is well behind the next car in front of him. So on track, Gergaud all the way up the mountain is the next driver on Steinhauser's agenda to try to overtake, but you see visibly that he is very, very far away, so it's still going to be a very, very long afternoon for the man in P2 in the championship. So both of our main championship contenders having a very difficult day, whereas the likes of the man in P3, Remy Papin, he was involved in that as well at the start, so he is behind Steinhauser. So as it stands, it's the likes of Alessio Mellis that might actually end up taking the championship lead or very much challenging for it, because he's the first of our drivers in that kind of top battle that hasn't had a disastrous start, but at the moment he is coming under immense amount of pressure from Luka Vidalik over the top of the mountain. And it's so difficult. We saw Ferraris making mistakes down into the S's before as Yelenko's coming to the pits. So Yelenko, as well as one of the other drivers that came in earlier to, I think it was Weber, that decided to correct their tyre pressures by the looks of it. Yelenko making the same decision. So, although he was gaining a lot of time over Jogurk, has now decided to pull the plug on that strategy, has decided that the extra tyre wear is potentially not worth it, and just to try to get a new set of boots on the car. So that really puts him now a pit stop behind Jogurk, who's done a 2:03.8 on that last lap, so it's not the fastest lap, but it's pretty quick relative to a lot of the rest of the field. For reference, that was still a second slower than what Yelenko last did, so very, very curious to see what's happening with the strategy calls. Oh, there's an instant, the 108 car, who is that? That's David Gavon on the mountain, who has come to a stop. Cameras, please sort yourselves out. Okay, well, eventually, see Jogurk just darting through there. Thankfully didn't get caught up in that one this time round, but Gavon losing it just before Skyline then. Let's have a look back with that battle for P10 now, with Yelenko having pitted. Can Vidalik get onto the gearbox of the Ferrari? I do apologise for some of these cameras, they seem very, very lazy, so I'm not quite sure what the Australian camera crew had for lunch before this one, but Vidalik's still unable to make a move happen. You see, just ends up being so difficult to follow through a section, because even if you've got the pace, if someone makes a mistake just in front of you, you have almost no time to react. You have nowhere to go. There's just concrete barriers on either side, and that's why it's so dangerous around here. Who is that? There's the 402. Oh, Verona's had an off. Verona, who was doing very, very well further up the order, has had a mistake on the mountain as well. So what happened to the lead Lamborghini driver? It was all well and good going up through the climb. Was it McPhillamy Park that strikes again? Very, very cautious with that wall, but I've got a horrible feeling it's going to be... Oh, you can see visibly a huge bump, and does in fact tag the wall multiple times. So it's going to be big damage on the Lamborghini there. Does manage to get going again just before the likes of Papin were closing up. But that is very, very unfortunate for Verona's effort today. You can see it can go wrong so quickly, and Jogurk still continuing to lead and be on pretty strong pace. How is Yelenko faring further down the order? Always might actually check back with this battle between Mellis and Vidalik. Doesn't look like Vidalik is able to make anything happen just yet. So whereabouts is the likes of Uros Yelenko? Trying to... Oh, Yelenko's disconnected. Yelenko's disconnected from the server now. So what on earth has gone on there? So... now the man that could potentially challenge for the win over Jogurk for some unknown reason has left the server. So another Honda, the top two drivers that started this race have ended up dropping out of it. And that is disastrous for them. And I'll give a couple of free positions for some of these guys. Verona still about, but obviously in the pits trying to repair that damage. As we've got the likes of Jean-Michel Brin up into P7. The last of our drivers that haven't pitted, he's got Dudlison just up ahead of him, and then Steinhauser putting all sorts of pressure to try to unlap himself from these cars. It gets very, very tricky when you've got cars that are in a form of battle. They will obviously be having their own race, and Steinhauser, unless he is significantly faster than those around him, he does need to be careful not to impede any of that action. In actual fact, in the Bentley, he might be trying to use some of the tow, in fact, to benefit him and save on a bit of fuel, considering some of the issues that other Bentley drivers ran into yesterday. But you can see so far, drivers that started well down the order. We've got Koroshavin sitting in a comfortable P2. Madiri just a bit further back in P3. Tomlinson Dennis, who was well down the order, in P4. Rosetta P5. Dunnison and Jean-Michel Bryn have leaped up the order to take 6th and 7th. And those are all of our drivers that haven't pitted yet. And if you look, compare their times to now the lead driver who has done a pit stop, which is Watson, who did a 2:03.2 on the last lap, which was his best lap of the race. Definitely was the fastest of any of those in front of him, taking anywhere between 0.2 and 3/4 second. In actual fact, takes almost half a second from the likes of Yorgok. Oh, we might have a battle and move from Vidalik going towards turn 1 into Hell's Corner. Can he get a move done? No, he can't. And now he's got Trafka all over his gearbox as well. And the Honda is going to be licking his lips and seeing if he can make anything happen as they head back up towards the mountain. These cars all fairly good in terms of straight line speed, but I think Vidalik, has he got enough momentum to challenge into turn 2 this time? Not quite. I think he's going to be just too far back. You can actually hear him slightly back out of the throttle there, as I think the Ferrari went slightly wide, but no, does get it hooked up in the end. So Melis will survive that challenge for another day. But this strategy difference, these strategy differences really, really interesting, because some of these drivers may come out ahead of some of the other ones that are yet to pit, but the tyre wear differences are going to be really extreme and really different, and how that factors into the race. And oh, you can see just the margin so tight. Vidalik and Melis absolutely giving no caution whatsoever to the wall through that very difficult section. It's so difficult trying to get your car lined up through there and use all of the track. If you absolutely exploit the limits, you are incredibly quick. If you push it a smidge over, disaster can happen instantaneously. But this is the closest that Vidalik has been in a while, and that was a pretty good exit from him. And I don't know if the Ferrari ahead is going to have the straight line speed down Conrad Straight in order to survive one more attack. They're certainly going to be side by side, I think, before they head towards the chase. There's a nasty bump through here, so hopefully they'll make it through all okay as they're side by side. Melis almost on the grass as they run down towards into the chase. Side by side, Trafka's dropped back as there's a big slide there from Vidalik, but they still managed to give each other room, and the Audi may just have enough drive as they head down towards the final corner. Ferrari still has a nose in it, trying to keep it there. Vidalik respects it, but does get the move done. And now I think Melis might be under pressure from the Ferrari, from the Honda behind, excuse me, as Trafka is going to try going for a move now around the outside of Hell's Corner. That's going to be a difficult one. It's going to allow the Audi to run away a little bit up the front of this pack. Vidalik will be able to extract a bit of pace out of his car, but Trafka unable to make a move just yet. I don't know if he's going to have the momentum before turn 2. Does he think about it? He's showing a nose, but that's all he's going to be able to do. Let the Ferrari know he's there. I'm sure Melis is acutely aware of that number 7 Honda in his rear view mirrors. Beautiful camera shot as they pass through here into this very tough section further up the mountain. But Vidalik then able to finally get that move done, and also able to get a nice breakaway as well. So we'll have to see if Ferrari get really pushing the limits around the mountain. Just about keeping it within bounds without getting any damage. I think we've also got a fairly close tussle with... Bryn's fallen off a little bit there. I think we had some other drivers that were fairly close as well. We've got... Oh! That was Rodri that had a huge lag moment, thankfully. That's definitely a very poor connection for the number 200 Audi. Weirdly not showing any sort of issues on the ping, but clearly not a not very stable one of that has jumped off the mountain a couple of times through that sequence. Just ahead of him though, Remy Rose and Matt York battling quite hard for 16th position now, and I think Matt York might have enough. This time he's pretty close. Will we have a repeat of the sort of fight we saw between Vidalik and Nellis not too long ago is taking a while for York to be able to get side by side, but he is going to get a nose there before the chase actually goes over the curb. It's very unusual to do that and survive. Matt York just about managing. Remy Rose not giving an inch, but gets it also wrong on the exit, and Matt York trying to get a nose up the inside. He might just have him out enough if he's more confident on the brakes to try to push the 717 out to the edge of the track, but unable to do it. And now Rodgery in the McLaren, despite the connection issues, trying to get involved in this one as well. Can't do anything. Down towards the one, and Matt York almost loses it on the entry into Hell's Corner. Takes a little bit too much grass, but out of all of that, somehow seemingly has a run that can actually try to make a move around the outside of Remy, but that's going to be a very difficult one. We said before turn 2, all you need to do is hold the inside line. It's almost impossible to pass there. Rodri seeing how he can try to capitalise on this as the BMW. Remy Rose goes all the way to the wall, just about keeps it out of the barrier for a big impact, but loses both positions in the process, and the pressure from Matt York eventually gets to the number 717 BMW, who was already starting to make some mistakes and eventually will have to relinquish a position. Checking back up ahead though, Jean-Michel Brin and Duttison still very, very close in this tail-end battle of those that haven't pitted yet. Can the Lamborghini do anything he thinks about a move? Is Duttison going to respect it? He's given him more than a car's width on the entry. Steinhauser is potentially going to try to go past the pair of them with those exits compromised, but Steinhauser I don't think will be able to. But Jean-Michel Brin in the end showed his nose to Duttison, and the Audi driver getting firmly out the way of the apex there, and the Lamborghini able to make up the position. So good move there from the number 21. So let's check up again on the sort of lap times we've got for our potential race lead. Jorgerk still doing low 203s, although on that last lap Koroshavin was the, actually Madiri was the fastest of the top 3. And then the next fastest car on circuit was the likes of Jordan Watson and Vidalik, interestingly. So Vidalik showing good race pace. We said he has a mature head on his shoulders in sim racing and in the AOR leagues, and perhaps it's that aspect that is allowing him to work his way back through the order. He's second on track out of those that have pitted, and that could very well look to challenge for a podium at the latter stages of the race. So he's looking very, very quick at the moment. Also the likes of Melis, Trafka, Nicholas Hertz, and even likes of Cowley that are showing strong pace at this point in the race as well. So interesting to see how that is going to play out. Verona has done that second pit stop, obviously repairing the damage. Did a 203.4 there, so not the sort of pace that he needs. Weber still in this, actually did 202.9, so the only driver to be in the 202s on that last lap. Oh, as big things now happening. Christian Jorgerk decides to come into the pits halfway through the race we are, and that is going to be when he decides to bite the bullet where Koroshavin has gone by, Madiri has gone by, so they're looking to stretch out this stint a bit further. But this will be very, very telling to see where is Jorgerk going to come out relative to the likes of Watson and Vidalik. Watson, our lead car that has pitted. This thing has got Remy Papin behind him, who is a lap down. Jorgerk, though, already leaving the pit, so Jorgerk is actually still going to be well ahead of the likes of Watson, who hasn't even finished the lap yet. So Jorgerk still looks to have a very, very comfortable lead, but a lot of traffic to deal with. He's got Steinhauser trying to unlap himself ahead. He's got Dunnison, who's actually trying to overtake Jorgerk here. That's a dangerous play to make, my friend. And he decides to duck in behind. Probably wise to do so, because you would have to imagine in a couple of laps that SpongeBob Audi would look to pull away. And then we'll have the likes of Steinhauser and Jean-Michel Brin ahead. Obviously Steinhauser a lap down, so will have to look to get out of the way and not impede. Jean-Michel Brin will be for position, but clearly these drivers are not exactly in the same race at the moment. But Jorgerk then has managed to maintain a very, very strong bid for his first win of the season potentially, and if he does win this race, it would be him that would look to take the championship lead all the way up from 7th in the current standings. So he'll be looking to convert this one. Koroshavin now comes into the pits as well. Had a little bit of a visual glitch there. What about Madiri? Madiri continuing to stay out. So interesting decisions there from him. Have to see what Tomlinson Dennis does in terms of his choices as well, and he will come in too. It does look like we're going to have dry running all the way to the end of this race, so there won't be any more surprises in that regard. Jogurk now has got past Steinhauser, so Steinhauser presumably let him go on the Conrad straight. Obviously not going to be putting up any sort of form of fight against the race leader. Very, very gutting feeling when it is like that. In the meantime, Melis coming under pressure again from Trafka, who has been lapping just slightly quicker, and there's a Honda just ahead. The number 31, who is that? That is... I'm trying to find who that number 31 car is. There's contact between the pair of them, and that's going to allow Trafka to go through. I think I was looking at the position number, not the race number, so I think that was driver in 31st. And it was, and that was Sheng HQB, possibly to do with the ping, dare I suggest, and unfortunately getting it all wrong in terms of responsibilities as a backmarker and losing Melis a position, allowing Trafka to be able to capitalise on that and jump through, and it almost allowed Nicholas Hertz in the 303 Porsche, another new driver for the championship, making his debut today, almost allowed him to get past the Ferrari as well. But it's going to be difficult for the Porsche to make any positions up because it does suffer so badly with straight line speed. But yes, a very unfortunate sequence of events there with the Honda driver, but that trio will continue to battle on. Where did Koroshavin emerge relative to Jogurk? See Jogurk now already looking to come down the mountain and is actually right on the back of Rosetta. So once again, this is for position. Madiri, our current race leader, comes into the pits now as well. How does Rosetta play this? Is he going to allow Jogurk to go by? Jogurk is going to pull to the inside towards the chase, giving each other just enough room, and Rosetta is going to back out of it. Well done to the number 8 BMW. Recognises that they are not in the same race. But I will say, Jean-Michel Brin does seem to have gained quite a bit of time over the likes of Rosetta. Even on the previous lap, gained a second. So in the latter stages of this stint, Jean-Michel Brin has had pretty good pace amongst some of these other drivers, but obviously is yet to serve his pit stop. Have to see whereabouts Madiri emerges in the field. Jogurk on that last lap did the fastest lap of the race, a 202.4. Not sure if we had any other drivers in the 202s. Not a single one, so Jogurk now absolutely in fine form, and this race win is well within his grasp if he can remain consistent to the end. Madiri, and that is Vidalik just behind us. Number 15 car, who is that? It's brought out a yellow flag. That's Tomlinson Dennis. Tomlinson Dennis at the tail end of the circuit. Oh, and unfortunately, because he's disconnected from the session, the replay now can't capture what's happened to him. So we are now, unfortunately and rather pointlessly, looking at Vidalik, but that is a battle to keep an eye on in itself. Vidalik has been showing some very, very strong pace and now has the likes of Madiri just ahead of him on the circuit, which will be for a potential third place position. Although I say that, something else I didn't quite see, Jordan Watson has managed to jump up the order amongst all of that, and is just behind Dominic Koroshavin. So Koroshavin only recently having done his pit stop. Watson, one of our first drivers to pit, and is still lapping very, very quickly. Did 202.8 on that last lap. We'll have to see if the Ferrari still has the tyres to fight for that at the very end. Jean-Michel Brin still hasn't come in to do their pit stop, but I have to imagine that it would be at some point soon. Will he decide to go for it on this lap. It's looking like it, and yes, he will. The number 21 Lamborghini finally comes into the pits as we get a face full of pit boards there. And there's the red Lamborghini finally appearing in the background. So I have to see where he emerges, because was at the tail end of that sort of strategy call. He was also battling around the likes of Dunlinson, who's down in P20 now. So I have to see where Jean-Michel Brin emerges. Watson there lost 0.3 of a second to Koroshavin, so I'm not sure he's got the tyres to try to challenge for the P2 position just ahead of him. And in actual fact, what he'll more likely be worried about is how much time can the likes of Madiri and Vidalik gain in the final 25 minutes of the race. Madiri on fresher tyres of all of that top 5 group. And relative to the likes of Watson, a very big margin as the 980 car has brought out a yellow flag. That is Dunlinson. So Dunlinson, we were talking about him a moment ago, about he was coming out likely to be around where Jean-Michel Brin would emerge from the pits, and as he lost it over the chase. It can happen. There is a very tricky bump through that section. It can upset some cars. It's fine through there. Was it one of these curbs? It was! Oh, the smallest of errors! In a very uncharacteristic way to lose the car there. Doesn't make any contact with the wall and gets going there with the perfectly safe rejoin. So all safe and fine on that front. But that will definitely mean now that Jean-Michel Brin will emerge up ahead. And as the timing board for the number 21 car is just sorting itself out just a bit, but by the looks of it, he is well ahead of some of those other drivers, even ahead of the likes of Verona, who admittedly did a whole extra pit stop. We're not entirely sure why, but you can see the front of that Lamborghini has clearly seen better days. So Verona, despite having good pace around here, is certainly not in a car that is at its best at the moment. That would be very, very difficult to heave around some of these corners at the top of the hill. A very difficult day in the office for him, amongst many drivers that have fallen victim to the challenges of this circuit. In the meantime, we do actually have a battle for position between Steinhauser and Mash, and I think Steinhauser may have made that overtake happen. Those difficult tell. Oh, there's a yellow flag again. I think that actually might be a fairly safe one. I think that is Sheng actually letting several drivers go, although has just dived into the pits. So we'll just double check. It looked like on the mini map that the car was getting out the way for other drivers, but clearly not near anyone at the moment. So what happened here? So Sheng just comes to a complete stop. A complete stop before the pit entry. Oh, he's got the likes of Matt York and Thomas Jack squeezing their way through there, as Schengen then eventually decides to come into the pit lane, but that could have been absolutely disastrous. Poor Thomas Jack and that whole group that were coming through. That was clearly not what they would have been expecting. To find a Honda just parked in the middle of the circuit, that was, well, thankfully he was over to the left-hand side enough so that some of those other cars could get through, but very, very, well, dare I say, questionable driving there from the Honda driver there. In the meantime, Mellis is continuing to be under huge amounts of pressure from Nicholas Hurt. You can see how fast the Porsche is on this section of the mountain. Or maybe a dive down in towards the dipper, but not quite. As the Ferrari, oh, it's going to tag the wall. And does that give enough of exit speed advantage to the pink Porsche? It might well do, but that Ferrari is going to come back. And the Porsche has the advantage at the moment, but you can see the Ferrari power starts to get it down the hill, and you can just see the huge speed difference between these cars. And this is the frustration of being a Porsche driver. Sometimes if the circuit suits you, you have enough grip and acceleration elsewhere. Oh, that's a big kick of oversteer. Does he lose it altogether? Just about. Keeps it pointing the right way. A huge moment there for the 303 Porsche, and that allows Mellis for the first time in a long time to breathe, although does kick up quite a bit of dust on the exit of the final corner. But the Porsche continuing to show why it is such a tricky car to drive. and why it's so difficult sometimes around circuits like this when the overtaking opportunities are few and far between. You see, he was so much faster coming out of the dipper than the Ferrari, and then by the time, even sort of not long after Forest Elbow, after the kink, the Porsche just had nothing against the straight line speed of the Ferrari. So we're having a look now at the battle between Matt York and Thomas Jack. Matt York started well down the order, so he'll be very pleased to try to get a top 10 finish if he can. But Thomas Jack is putting him under all sorts of pressure. Are now Rodri not far behind, and there's also a battle between Mr. Jones and Robin Moe at the tail end of this group as well. It's all 147. Oh, it's Watson! Watson's gone off through the S's, and that sees the Ferrari driver drop out of the podium position. What on earth has happened to Watson? We saw him losing qualifying in that section with the Ferrari getting a light on the entry. It's all fair and square, but he has got a back marker ahead. Did that cause any issues? Oh, and it was a complete miscommunication between Gergaud and Jordan Watson, and huge consequences there for the Ferrari driver. And once again, after showcasing really strong pace during this race, misfortune strikes for the Ferrari, and I think that might be a retirement to the pits. Absolutely disastrous there, and Gergaud, I think, was trying to get out of the way before the S's, but it's such a tricky section to follow through there, and unfortunately, with the sort of margins that we see around here at Bathurst, slight miscommunications can have absolutely disastrous consequences like that. So action still continuing on in this race, even with just under 20 minutes to go, as Mr. Jones gets a little bit wide on the exit of the chase there. Robin Moe, trying to close up a bit. Does look like he is the faster car at the moment. The Aston Martin really does seem to be struggling in this last sector. Does the McLaren think about a move towards turn one? Not quite. Maybe he sets up a good exit though, as Jones had to back out a little bit. And does that give the McLaren enough of a run? The Aston Martin, though, clearly good straight line speed by the looks of it up the hill. And the McLaren just has nothing to fight with. It's not quite as bad as the Porsche, but it just doesn't have the torque to be able to maintain that sort of speed up the rest of the hill. Remember, under the hood of that Aston Martin is a Mercedes-AMG engine at heart, so there is a decent amount of grunt in that car, tuned down a little bit relative to the main Mercedes car, but is still a very torquey engine. Oh, that was very close to the wall. I thought the number 9 was about to tag the barrier there, but thankfully manages to keep it just out of danger. Matt York continuing to hold off Thomas Jack just behind. They've all benefited from that mistake from Watson. In the meantime, though, one thing I do want to look at, Mediri and Vidalik. Vidalik was 0.3 of a second faster than the BMW just up ahead of him, so although it's still going to take him a little bit of time to close up, that number 29 Audi is looking very feisty in this latter portion of the race, despite the tyre advantage that Mediri will have. I'll see what the lap time difference was in the last lap, as Mediri completely wipes away what I just suggested by setting a 202.7 and going faster than Vidalik. But the fastest man on track last time round was this man, Trafka, in P5, the remaining of our Honda trio that started at the front of this race. Has managed to work his way to... Oh, excuse me, no, he wasn't fastest on circuit. He did a 203.2, not a 202.2, but he has managed to recover to P5 despite what's clearly been a rather up and down day in the office. But relative to how some of our other Hondas have gone on, of the likes of Latz and Uros Yelenko, Trafka has had a pretty strong race so far. So, no, on that last lap, it was our race leader, Jogurk, who did the fastest lap of... No, excuse me, I got it wrong once more, as the time board decides to throw me one last throwaway. It was actually this man, Dominic Koroshavin, that set the fastest lap of the race on the last lap at 2:02.3. So still finding strong pace on these tyres, despite them being a little bit of a way into this stint now. Obviously, still a very big gap between him and the race leader, but a good, strong showing of pace there from the number 330 car. Another hop back to this battle between Mr. Jones and Robin Moe. Does look like the Aston Martin's been able to get a little bit of a gap going up the hill. And looks like he'll maintain that going down into the dipper. So Robin Moe. Oh, it's just a big mistake there from Mr. Jones, and all that gap that he just opened up has completely compromised him. And now, does that give enough of a run for the McLaren driver? Instead, even with that poor exit, he still manages to have enough grub. The McLaren now just starting to come back, but I don't even think he's going to be alongside before the chase. Chase coming up in just a second. So they make their way to the side of the track. Robin Moe closing more all the time, but not able to make anything happen. But another mistake there from Mr. Jones. I think his tyres are really dropping off now. And the 113 car in the hands of Robin Moe behind is looking very feisty. We'll hop on board with this Vodafone McLaren once again, very close going towards turn 1. Does he think about a move? He might have to go for it. Decides to back out of it. As Jones gets it neat and tidy through there, but a poorer exit this time round, and this might be the run that the McLaren needs, but he's going to have to go the long way around into turn 2, which is no easy feat. And as he comes out of the slipstream, that speed advantage is going to drop away from him. So if Mr. Jones keeps it neat and tidy, he should be able to hold the position, but we've seen BMW make mistakes here before. But no such error from Mr. Jones in the number 9 Aston Martin will continue to hold on to that P12 spot. But Robin Moe clearly, you see how much tighter to the apex he was there going through the cutting of turn 4. But just unable to make position happen. But Mr. Jones starting to flirt a little bit too close to the barrow. We saw him run it all the way up to the wall before. Robin Moe almost does the same thing, but there was just a small tap from the Aston Martin. Oh, as Robin Moe takes a little bit of the grass just before Skyline, gets it all hooked back up together. But with just under 15 minutes left, with the way this pace difference is fluctuating between these two, you would have to think that very soon that the McLaren would be able to make a move. No such mistake from the Aston Martin this time round. Let's go back on board with the McLaren. But you can see the drive that Mr. Jones is able to get out of the dipper is what saves him every single time that they head down towards the chase. And now Robin Moe way too far back to think about a potential move, I would have to think. As in the meantime, Verona all the way down at the tail end of the field, all the way down 24th position, has just done the fastest lap of the race on a 2:01.9, so significantly quicker than anyone in our top 3. Vitalik has fallen off the pace of Madeira a little bit there, so I think tyres suffering for him as well. So Madeira seemingly cementing that 3rd place position. Similar pace once again between our top 2 of Jogurk and Koroshavin, so not too many changes at the front. We've also got a battle between Neuwirth, Rosetta and Jean-Michel Brin. Jean-Michel Brin on the freshest tyres of each of these, and can he get a good enough run onto the BMW going up the hill? Neither of these cars too strong in a straight line. A little bit of rubber banding there, you can see, but Brin is going to head towards the outside, so he's forcing Rosetta to have to defend. Almost contact on the entry there, but just about manages to get through there cleanly. This will allow Neuwirth to breathe a little bit, as I think he was coming under pressure from the BMW as well. But right now it does look like Jean-Michel Brin, he was half a second faster than the pair of these drivers. Oh, really taking it all the way up to the wall. Has lost a considerable amount of time in that uphill run, and now Rosetta being the one to put pressure onto Neuwirth. So you can see really back and forth between how these drivers are getting on with various parts of the circuit, how the cars are set up, where they are strong and where they are not. But Then in this downhill section, in the slower speed corners, that's where the Lamborghini tends to be fairly strong. Is anyone going to be able to get a good enough exit this time round? Not sure. I think Rosetta might be a little bit too far away, but they are absolutely nip and tuck heading down this back straight. In actual fact, it might be Jean-Michel Brin that's the one to get enough of a run. The Lamborghini finally building up enough speed. A little bit of a move there from Rosetta. They're going to be side by side into a chase of disaster. Contact between the pair of them. Rosetta looked like he cut across ever so slightly the nose of the Lamborghini there. And that's, well, certainly giving more than enough breathing space to Neuwirth to be able to hold that 15th place position, but will go on board with Jean-Michel Brin. Really gained speed late on in this run down towards the chase. Goes to the inside. See if first a little move. Oh, that was very, very tricky. There wasn't much room before the apex, but he did just have a small amount of his car alongside, and Rosetta did not quite respect that. And unfortunately, around a circuit like this, you do very much have to concede sometimes to a car being there. Thomas Jack has completely fallen off the back of Matt York. He lost a second on that last lap, so I'm not sure what happened there to him as he almost tags the wall, heading through 9 and 10. Will manage to keep all together, but now, if anything, he might be coming under pressure from Arnaud Rodri. As, is in the meantime, Neuwirth. So how on earth is, I think, Neuwirth must have been able to keep on going then. Somehow, who's that? The 200 car has brought out a yellow flag. I think that's actually quite hard. That is Rodri. Rodri, so was just starting to get involved in a potential battle with Thomas Jack. We didn't cut away from him too long ago. Did he clip too much curb through Skyline? It's going to be on the entry then. Does he lose it on the braking? No, where's it going to happen? All very, very late, and just has a huge momentum swing in the car. All hopefully manages to get out of the way without collecting anybody. It's a very difficult thing to see. Oh, that was Mr. Jones and Robin Moe coming through there. McCluskey was there as well. And a very, very tricky part of the circuit trying to rejoin. It looks like there wasn't any further damage between those drivers. As in the meantime, Robin Moe now under pressure from the big bad Bentley of McCluskey, trying to see if he can make a potential move. It's been a good drive here from McCluskey so far. Started well down the order, but has kept his head down and out of trouble. And is now looking to try to challenge for P12 in this race. But a very, very unusual place to lose it there from Rodri, but such a tricky circuit that it's so easy to lose it anywhere around here at Bathurst. Think this. Oh, who else have we got a yellow flag out for now? That's Verona. So Verona, the man that set the fastest lap of the race. Oh, is that Shane coming through? Just about managing to. Oh, that's Verona tagging the wall. There's another car coming through. That's Trafka. That's Trafka trying to skirt his way through. And now we've got more cars coming through. These are some of our lead drivers just outside the top 5. And thankfully, no one ending up coming victim to a horrible collision just before the S's. But Verona then lost the car seemingly on the exit of McPhillamy Park. Won't quite have enough replay to go back and see what happened to him, but that lost him a huge amount of time, and his day goes from bad to worse, as many drivers there having to try to take avoiding action, and so difficult in that short space of time to judge which way you go, and you just pray and hope that you made the right decision. In the meantime, though, looking back towards this battle for P12, McCluskey has fallen ever so slightly away now from McLaren. See, how much of a straight line speed advantage does the Bentley have? Not a great deal. Maybe a little bit like the Lamborghini may come nearer the end of the straight. But no, McCluskey will need to be significantly closer than that if he is going to look to try to make a move on the McLaren driver, so no such luck for him just yet. Also, another driver that has had a pretty strong day is James Cowley. Started further down in the order, has managed to pick his way through the field, although saying that, a second faster than him and not too far behind was this man Matt York with 6.5 minutes on the clock. He'll be seeing if he can turn that P9 into a P8 for what would be a pretty magnificent comeback drive through the field after what has been such an up and down race for all of these drivers, both figuratively and literally speaking. But it's got to continue to take that margin out of Cowley if he wants to make a move happen, because closing up is one thing, making a move is another. In the meantime, Neuwirth has continued to be able to hold off Rosetta despite all of that action happening early on. Rosetta flashing the lights there. I think that's mainly... I didn't see any yellow flags for an incident or anything. May not have picked it up, but I don't believe that there's been any contact between these two. So that's just trying to put the Aston Martin driver off, I do believe. But it does look like Neuwirth once again is struggling. See, visibly struggling with the understeer as he comes over the top of the mountain. How do they fare going into the S's? Oh, you can see how much more confident Rosetta was there. He gained a huge amount of time going through there. This is an onboard we haven't looked at in a bit, trying to follow a car through this section. Tricky braking zone into the dipper. Try to get on the power as quick as possible, but be wary of that outside wall. Now does the BMW have enough of a potential run going down the back straight? Oh, we've also got changes of positions happening further up as well. We'll have a look at this on this battle. For now, I think Rosetta, oh, he's not quite close enough alongside to go for a move on the apex of a chase, but does he get a nose down the inside? Neuwirth gives him room. He's going to try holding around the outside. Oh, as Rosetta goes for quite an aggressive comeback, but in the meantime, we've got Hurt and Mellis going side by side. Hurt desperately trying to make that position stick with the Porsche, and I think he has eventually done it. So now he's got all sorts of pressure from... Oh, I think that's actually Verona a lap down behind, but Nicholas Hurt finally manages to make the move stick, and it happened well before they got to turn 2. But you can see the straight line speed advantage that Ferrari has. It's absolutely massive, but has to be forced towards the outside. He was well alongside before getting to turn 2, but there is no grip out there whatsoever, and Nicholas Hurt finally makes a move stick in the Porsche, so a good effort there from him. I also saw a comment in the chat about the Ferrari trying to attempt make an overtake attempt on the Honda. I'm not sure if we have a battle between a Honda and a Ferrari at the moment. No, unfortunately not. No, our only Ferrari actually left in the race is the one of Mellis, and you can see visibly up against the Porsche that there was a huge straight line speed advantage. Up against the Honda, the Ferrari does, I would say, still have a slight advantage, but the Honda does generally seem to be a bit more suited around the circuit in general, and hence has had generally better pace today. But Nicholas Hurt, valiant effort there from him in the Porsche. Had to make up a decent margin of gap there as well previously after that mistake when battling with the Ferrari before, and did manage to come back to make the move stick. So a good showing from him. I think we'll have 2 more laps left to go as Christos Jorgerk still continuing to do very, very strong laps, lapping in the mid 202s at the moment. He had a bit of a chaotic first lap trying to make his way around some of the other drivers, those Hondas that were ahead of him. But having dealt with that, has managed to get himself into a very commanding position all race long, and have 1 more lap after this to try to bring it home. In the meantime, oh, Mellis actually tags a little bit of the wall there in the background. Thankfully not suffering too much damage. Oh, it's a big mistake there from Hurt, and he tags the wall up the hill, and after all that hard work, he loses it. And Mellis and the lapped car of Verona go past him, and you would have to imagine that with the damage that Nicholas Hurt probably just got on that Porsche, that would drop him down the order can see as he came in towards this very tricky double apex corner of 3 and 4. He's sweeping in and then just gets a little kick of oversteer under braking and slams into a wall. There is no margin for error up there, and Mellis managed to keep his car out of trouble there and immediately capitalise on that. So very, very unfortunate there from the 303 Porsche. He'll be very frustrated with that after fighting for that position for so long. Jogurk has just started the final lap of the race, as in the meantime Nicholas Hurt actually, if I can click on him, coming under pressure now from Cowley, and that Porsche is going to be suffering. Oh, is this contact before the chase? And Cowley has to completely back out of that one, and see flashing the lights, very much not happy about that, and York looking to get involved in all of this as well. We'll have a look at that from Cowley's point of view. You can see, look at the gap that was between him and Nicholas Hurt before they got towards the chase. That aero damage that Hurt would have got won't be helping him. But you can see how much time he gained. He heads towards the inside and Hurt just continues to move across the track. That was a very, very late manoeuvre there from Nicholas, and obviously frustrated by that mistake, but that's arguably some dangerous driving there from him, and he's under all sorts of pressure already once more as they head back up towards the hill. Cowley trying to go around the outside. It's a difficult one to pull off, and Nicholas Hurt fending him off. Matt York now trying to capitalise on this, go around the outside potentially of James Cowley. And is he going to make his stick? And he will! Matt York, very, very opportunistic driving, and he may even get a shot at the Porsche driver down the back straight as well, because we know that Porsche is struggling in every aspect, and particularly the straights at the moment. So we'll have to see if he can make anything happen there. Mellis still holding P6 up ahead, but today is all about this man in the SpongeBob livery Audi. Christos Jogurk managed to get into the lead at the beginning, and he's already weaving in celebration, and after a commanding and dominant drive from him, he will bring home a well-deserved race win to see his first win of the season. A fantastic drive there from him, whilst just behind Daniel Pashka with a very difficult day in the office. Cora Shavin will come home in P2. We will jump back though to see, is there going to be a potential move between Matt York and Nicholas Hurt? Hurt already weaving, and you can see gaining all the time, and he's doing the same thing to what happened to Cowley before. It's just contact again, and Matt York keeps his foot in the air, just about keeps the car under control. And Nicholas Hurt, you need to be very careful about how many times you do things like that. Cowley's gone off in the background, should just about get back on track before Thomas Jack has anything to say about that position, I believe. Think he will hold it, but Matt York there making up 2 positions in the final couple of laps for a brilliant recovery drive up to P7. Nicholas Hurt puts the car in the wall, and well, there might be some things to be said in the stewards' inquiries after that, as Cowley clearly very much not happy with the 303 cars driving there, and I can understand his frustration, but brilliantly driven from Matt York, and just about managed to keep it all together in the final part of the lap. In the meantime, we've got Jean-Michel Brin fending off Jay Fang. I think he may have managed to make a move potentially on the last lap of the race. So Jean-Michel Brin will come home in P17, has the likes of Weber just ahead of him, last week's winner, so a difficult day from him. Fang finishing just behind Duttison in 17th, did manage to catch up to the Lamborghini that he was battling with earlier. Rodri, after that mistake on the mountain, will finish in P18. Hans-Peter finishing in P19. And I do believe we have one car left out. We've got Remy Papin, who driving around with his bikini bottom team compatriot there. I said I would try to show off these 2 cars, and we've got the livery of Christos Jogurk in SpongeBob theme, Remy Papin in Patrick Star theme there. We've got Vidalik and Madiri joining just behind them, so don't worry, these cars are not being held up. They have also finished the race, so whilst Remy Papin is looking to complete his final lap after a difficult day for him, and will actually pull to the side of the road by the looks of it, so I think that will potentially be it. Do we have anyone else left out on the circuit? We have some cars that are seemingly finishing some laps. Who have we still got out on the circuit? We've got Cora Shavin, who's just come into the pits. Number 12 car. Who is that? That is Terminant. Terminant, our lone Lexus, and unfortunately, a bit of a lone wanderer at the end there. Has actually technically finished the race. So I'm not quite sure why the server hasn't brought the race to an end. Usually it calls it off. Maybe I'll do it after the Lexus crosses the line. Nope. So not quite sure what the server is doing there then, but there we go. In the end, but Christos Yogurk then was your winner, and a dominant winner at that today after an absolutely spectacular drive all race long, and he is already in the commentary box, first across the line and first into the comms box as well, so we'll look to get him in for an interview in just a moment. So we shall bring in the man of the hour. Christians, can you hear me?
Yes.
Fantastic stuff from you all race long today, and it looked like it would be unfair for me to suggest it was a walk in the park, because Bathurst clearly one of the most challenging and demanding circuits on sort of any GT calendar, and a lot of people would argue probably the most difficult and mentally straining. We saw so many drivers coming into various bits of misfortune, but you were just absolutely a class of your own all race long. So first of all, congratulations, and how are you feeling after that drive?
Well, this was like a dream victory for me. All the stars aligned. The strategy was perfect. The whole race it basically went without any major problems. Clearly the three Hondas in front of me that qualified in front of me, they were all quicker. Like, clearly the Hondas were in a completely different league today. But somehow all three of them just ended up with misfortune, and I was able to somehow bring it home. That's a really great result for me. Like, I was not expecting it at all. I'm really happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And when that rain was opening up at the beginning, I was saying to the stream that this could really start to play into things, and quite clearly it paid absolute dividends for the strategy that you went down. I did see it wasn't entirely straightforward for you though, because I did see that there was a moment where I think there was a back marker that spun on the entry to Skyline, and you did actually, or somewhere in the S's, you got a little bit of a tag on that lap from that car. Did that give you too much damage, or was it still fairly light and not too bad?
I actually had forgotten about that moment. Yeah, there was a really weird situation. I flashed him before the mountain because I knew that I'd probably have a bit more pace than him, and I just wanted to bring out the gap more. Sadly, he didn't let me through. Then he messed up in the skyline. He went straight through. I thought I was just gonna quickly pass him, but I guess we kind of had a misunderstanding, and he squished me into the wall. Well, he came off a lot of force from it, so sorry for him, but I'm not really sure what should I have done. Like, I'm pretty sure I have the how do you say?
Kind of priority in that
Yeah,
sort of
priority.
situation.
Yeah, because he technically was the one off the track, so he should let me go.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, it's always such a tricky situation. We saw actually Jordan Watson suffered a very similar fate, and unfortunately, he was the car that came off worse. There was a miscommunication between him and a back marker, and he ended up dropping out of a P5 position at a very late stage in the race from that. So it's so difficult, and there were so many times during this race where, you know, just slight miscommunications, decisions happening marginally too late, having absolutely dramatic consequences. But thankfully, from your perspective, it ended up not coming off too badly. Clearly, still having a huge margin at the end there to win in front of Koroshavin. So yeah, an absolutely brilliant race there for you. Also managed to capture on stream, although your teammate didn't have so much of a great day, that we did get you in formation for the Bikini Bottom team over that in lap at the end of the race to show off those liveries, and they look very nice indeed. So yeah, so a brilliant day there from you. And in terms of the championship, whilst I can't be 100% certain, I'm fairly confident that you will at least be in P2 in the standings. There's a chance that Alessio Mellis may have gathered enough points within his top 10 position to take the championship lead. I'm not 100% certain. I will try to double check that momentarily, but also with the leaderboard moving around everything, it's tough to double check. But clearly a big bump up in the standings for you, whereas the likes of Pashka, Steinhauser, who got caught up in a massive incident on the first lap, really dropping down. So that puts you in very good stead heading into Zandvoort. And how are you feeling going into the next round?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for catching the shot on the in lap. That's exactly what we wanted to do, so I'm happy about that. And about Zandvoort, I'm honestly not so sure. I've never really been a big fan of the track, and I remember that the old Evo Audi wasn't exactly the best there. It's just not a car that works well on that track, so I'm guessing the Evo 2 is probably somewhat the same, but I guess I'm just gonna have to salvage as much as I can.
Yeah, of course. And if anything from today is to go by, it's that you can never know what is going to happen in these races. So we've seen drama in the previous races, and undoubtedly we will see it again heading into Zandvoort. So yeah, once again, absolutely massive congratulations on a dominant victory today at Bathurst. King of the Mountain goes to you, and best of luck going into Zandvoort next week.
Yep, thanks.
Thanks, Christus. So a very happy man there to win that race. And we've also got Loris Madiri, who finished in P3, has joined up for an interview, so we'll bring him in. Loris, can you hear me?
Ciao, John.
Hi there, Loris.
Don't speak English.
Well, congratulations on P3. A very good drive there from you. How are you feeling after that?
Grazie, thanks.
Excellent. I'm glad that you're happy with that finish, and it was a very chaotic race, but big congratulations on that result to you, Loris. Very well done.
Thanks. Non ci ho capito niente, però va bene lo stesso. Grazie. Thanks.
Grazie to you, Loris, and we'll see you next week at Zandvoort. Thanks for coming in the comms box.
Ok. Non ci ho capito.
Oh, I feel like I cut him off slightly too early there, but I'm sure there'll be some followings there of his, I presume, Italian compatriots in the chat that will have had a far greater understanding of the comments that Loris was making there. Unfortunately, I'm barely fluent in English half the time, let alone other languages. But yeah, so clearly a very happy man there in Loris for getting that P3 finish in that race. And whereabouts was he prior? I don't remember. So he was down in P13 in the standings. So that will certainly help his championship campaign by a significant amount. Yeah, so a brilliant and strong drive there from him. So I'll do my best to go through the order. Sometimes the leaderboard at the end of the races is a little bit on the wonky side, but we had Christos Jogurk finishing in first place after a dominant win over the rest of the field, with Koroshavin finishing in P2. Brilliant stuff there from him. Madiri in P3, with Vidalik with a strong charge back through the field to end up finishing in P4. We had Mellis with a strong drive and a lot of drama at the end to see him go up to P5. and then followed up by Matt York, who really capitalised on some last-minute errors and battles to see himself go up to P6. A brilliant drive from him. I did see someone calling to get him into the interview room. Unfortunately, hasn't joined in for a possible one yet, so we'll see if he joins just before the end. But yes, an excellent drive there from him. Trafka, the last of our remaining Honda trio, finishing just behind, with Thomas Jack behind him down in P8, with Cowley finishing up in P9 by the looks of it. But I do remember Cowley actually finishing just ahead, so I'm not 100% certain that is entirely truthful, and again, this is part of the joys and wonders of this leaderboard, so based on that, I shall probably call that leaderboard rundown there, because I'm not too trusting of how that may have finished. Unfortunately, standing's not quite updating just yet either, but a mixture of misfortune for drivers today. Pashka, Steinhauser had it very, very difficult from the off, with clearly a difficult day in the office for them. And then we had the likes of Watson, who came so close to bringing it home for a strong P5 finish, and then had that last couple of laps incident to go, saw him end up retiring. Saw incidents for the likes of Rodrigo Gaud, Tomlinson Dennis, several drivers retiring. Dennis Latz, who ended up seemingly disconnected from the session. Yelenko ended up leaving the session. Didn't quite ever track down what happened to them, but after starting on the very front row of the grid and seemingly having it all in the best form for a good result, didn't end up managing to bring it home. So a very, very mixed day here for Tier 2 at Bathurst, but we would expect nothing less. The Mount Panorama always brings drama and never ceases to create exciting action, no matter the circumstances. So seemingly that looks like that's going to be it for Bathurst today. We will be heading over to Zandvoort next time out for round 4, so the midpoint of the season, and be very interesting to see how some of those cars end up playing out. Things like the Ferrari, the BMW might end up being a bit stronger back there, and the sort of pace of the Audi, Yogurk already being slightly concerned about it, and the Hondas may not be quite as strong. So I have to see how all of the Tier 2 guys get on with that one. But that will be it then for today. So if you want to get involved in some of this sort of racing yourself, do think about heading over to the website apexonline.racing, where you can see what leagues are being hosted by AOR, and think about getting involved in some of this racing and featuring on the cameras. If you want to follow AOR on Twitter as well, head over to @ApexOnRacing, where you can see updates of what leagues are coming out and when streams are heading out across all of the different platforms of sim racing titles that are being hosted. And if you just want a friendly environment where you can share that community spirit of passion for motorsport and sim racing, look to join the Apex Online Racing Discord server as well. It's always great to grow the community and bring more people in. So next week, Zandvoort, be normal times as always, with Rage and Jay bringing you action for Tier 1 on Monday at 7:30 British time, and myself potentially joined by a co-commentator next week to bring you all the action for Tier 2 at the same time. So thank you everybody so much for watching what was another entertaining race, and we'll see you next week then. But for now, it's good night.